Welcome back to another class on Halacha for women. We are in the sefer called Otzar Denim by Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef Shlita. The Rav brings down a very small and simple halacha, but to appreciate the halacha, we'll have to do a little bit with the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, in Halacha Aleph, in the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkat and Aleph, to better appreciate the halacha. If I'm going to ask you now, when you come to wash your hands for the bread meal, how do you do it? So you're going to tell me it's very simple, Rabbi. Before I go wash my hands for the bread meal, I take the cup with my right hand, I fill up the water till the top, I transfer the cup to my left hand, and then I start washing my hands 3 times, or even like we learned before, 1 time is good enough, as long as you get the whole hand wet, and then I hand over the cup back here, and then I do the same thing over here. Now you're going to tell me that is the way to wash one's hand. However, you have to understand, prior to washing your hands for the bread meal, there is something else you have to do. And that is, you have to make sure that there's no Chatzitzah between the water and your skin. Now, what does Chatzitzah literally mean? Chatzitzah literally means separation. That there shouldn't be any separation between the skin and the water. For example, okay, this is a bookmark, but let's just say it's a bandage. Now, if I want to put this bandage, let's say on my finger right over here, correct? If I have this bandage over here, and I'm washing my hands, and water is not able to touch the area where the adhesive is at, that means I haven't washed my hands properly. So that is a very big problem. That's why we want to make sure that you're not allowed to have any Chatzitzah. Again, let's do it one more time, but whenever I say Chatzitzah, remember that this is the definition. Chatzitzah literally means something which is going to make a separation between the skin and the water. It's not going to allow the water to touch the skin. So therefore, whenever you come to wash your hands for the bread meal, it's not enough just to wash your hands like the Halacha requires you to do so. But now you have to make sure that your hands are actually clean from any filth. Or you might have something stuck there. Maybe you didn't pay attention, something got stuck. For example, you had a bandage on you, and when you ripped the bandage, you see sometimes the sticky stuff stays on your finger. That's a Chatzitzah. That's not how you wash your hands. But comes Rav Yitzchak Yosef Shlita, and he's going to tell you, צריכה האישה לנקות את ידיך קודם הנטילה מלכלוך שתחת הציפורן. A woman needs to clean her hands prior to the washing of the hands for the bread meal from dirt which is underneath the fingernail. If you have over there filth, zohoma, I'm not speaking about like regular, it's disgusting, you can't put up with it. So now, before you wash your hands, you have to make sure that there's no dirt over there. You have to actually even clean underneath your fingernail. I will strongly suggest, maybe if your husband is a Talmud Chacham, or maybe if you could get your hands on a Mishnah Berurah, the English edition, to look into Siman Kuf Samach Aleph. There are 4 halachot that speak about the importance of not having any Chatzitzah. But the first halacha speaks about what type of dirt can be under the fingernail, cannot be under the fingernail. Rav Yitzchak Yosef Shlita is telling us over here, dirt which is underneath the fingernail, you have to remove it before washing the hands. He makes it very short and concise. So I'm going to stick with his ruling. But there are many, many times when you can have dirt underneath the fingernail. It depends on what type of dirt. So I'll give you an example. Let me give you one example. Let's say a person, it's a hot day, now the weather is getting beautiful. You're walking outside, especially women, that you guys have long nails. So what do? You're sweating, so you scratch yourself. And you collect the sweat and it gets stuck underneath the fingernail. Or another example I'll give you. A lady was changing the diaper. And by accident, somehow while wiping the child, she got number 2 stuck underneath her fingernail. Again, these little things, we're not probably going to go wash our hands, of course. But how many of us are careful to make sure that we have nothing underneath the fingernail? Especially the woman, that when you look at your fingernail, when you actually turn them around, you'll see how much dirt there is. So you have to be very careful with this type of dirt and to'ah. There's many things that can disqualify the washing of the hands. So that's why we have to be very careful before we wash the hands for the bread meal, to make sure that our hands, even underneath the fingernail, there shouldn't be any form of Chatzitzah. Bezrat Hashem, maybe the rabbi is going to speak about more the halachot, because I would have done it with you guys in the Shulchan Aruch itself, but it's not a Shulchan Aruch class that I can do it, is because it's a little bit in-depth learning. So that's why Rav Yitzchak Yosef wrote it in short, in one-liner. But I would strongly suggest, if you could get your hands on Simon 161 and Halacha Aleph at least, and do the Mishnah Berurah there with its details to get a better understanding to when you have to clean underneath your nail and when you don't have to clean underneath your nail. You want to stay safe, you want to play it safe, do like Rav Yitzchak Yosef Shuta said, that if you have dirt underneath the fingernail, clean it out, and then you are able to go ahead and wash it, and you don't have to learn the whole siman. Okay. Now, before we do conclude, I want to share with you how important it is to make sure that you don't have Chatzitzah on your hands. The Shulchan Aruch, this halacha that the Rav took, comes from the Shulchan Aruch in Simon Kuf Samach Aleph. The Shulchan Aruch says, Tzarich leizacher mechatzitza. A person needs to be careful from a chatzitza. Why? Shekol davar shechotzetz b'tefila chotzetz b'netila. Anything which is a chatzitza by the tefila is going to be chatzitza by the netila. So therefore, it can go ahead and it can actually disqualify the washing of your hands. So that's why a person has to be very careful with the laws of Chatzitzah on his hands. Because look at this. We're looking at the washing of the hands as if a woman is dipping into the mikvah. Do you understand that whenever a woman goes to the mikvah, she has a Chatzitzah on her body, and she went to the mikvah, she came out, she didn't do anything. Same thing over here. If a person had a Chatzitzah on his hands and they wash their hands, we'll see. Right now I'm going to explain how it works. The washing is not a good washing. So that's why we have to be very careful to make sure that there is no Chatzitzah. So I want to just show you over here. We're going to begin with this side of the board. This, right now, everything that I'm going to be speaking about over here is going to be speaking about Tvilat HaGuf. When a woman goes to the mikvah, a lot of times one of the biggest challenges a woman has is taking off her nail polish before she goes to the mikvah. Even if you're going to tell me that the nail polish is fresh and everything is good and there's no nick on the nail polish, meaning on the fingernail, even if you're going to tell me that the whole nail polish is fresh and technically she is allowed to go like that to the mikvah, but the Shulchan Aruch says the minhag is not like that. You should actually take it off, ask your local rabbi what to do. But the problem is not the nail polish. These questions come up all the time. Before I tell the woman to take off the nail polish or to keep on the nail polish, depending who I'm speaking to, if she's a secular girl, right, she's not going to listen. So I'll tell her, make sure they're clean, make sure they're fresh, and you can go to the mikvah. But if she's a religious person who's God-fearing, I'll tell her to do what Maran Shulchan Aruch says. The custom is to make sure that you have to take off the nail polish. Anyway, each one of you should ask your own local rabbi and follow what he says. But that's not the point. The point is, it's not the nail polish that's really the problem. The problem is when you turn around your fingers and you see how much garbage is underneath the fingernails, that is going to make a Chatzitzah for the woman to going into the mikvah. That means she could have gone to the mikvah, but it didn't help. So that's why women that have long nails with nail polishes, so they can really see if it's dirty or not, they have to make sure they turn around and have to clean out the underneath the fingernail thoroughly to make sure that there's nothing dirty there. Because that is one form of Chatzitzah that can be on a woman's body. Another form of Chatzitzah that can be on a woman is meat. When a woman will eat steak or chicken and it gets stuck between the teeth, many times people come up with the same question, Rabbi, my wife washes her teeth, isn't that good enough? That is not good enough. By brushing your teeth, you do not get every crack and crevice. By flossing, you'll be able to clean between the teeth. By brushing, not necessarily everything's going to come out. So therefore, a woman has to also be very careful to make sure she flosses, because she's not allowed to have meat stuck between her teeth. You're going to say, Rabbi, 1 second. But she's not opening up her mouth in the mikvah in order for her to go ahead now and be careful with the flossing. Correct. But nevertheless, the Halacha says, the Gemara brings down, a woman has to make sure that her mouth is clean, that if we were to put water into her mouth, meaning the mikvah water, it would have to be able to clean out those places. Right? It's a conceptual idea. So that's why a woman has to be very careful that her mouth is completely clean before going to the mikvah. Another important point, when a woman dips into the mikvah, somebody asked me this question also, that when they dip into the mikvah, so a lot of women there, I don't know how deep your mikvahs are. Men, like if I go to the men's mikvah, it's like literally up to my waist. It's not very deep. I mean, you have to like literally go down. But some mikvot, I guess, for women are much deeper, probably only because of the long hair, because the hair has to also be inside the mikvah. So a lot of them are afraid. So what do? They'll seal their lips, not like this. You pay attention how my mouth is closed. Normally. Yeah, I'm tightening right now a little bit, but you can't see much outside. But some women, what do? They go ahead and they close their lips like this. Now that's a problem, because now you're not allowing water to come over here. Another form of Chatzitzah. So a woman has to be very, very careful. Very, very careful when it comes to these laws. That's why you have a balanit over there. That's why you have a lady over there that should be God-fearing, that should know these laws, that she should check you before you go inside the mikvah. Okay, Rabotai? Because remember, if the dipping is no good, chas v'shalom lo aleinu, you're a nida and your husband's sleeping with you the next 14 or 18 days with a nida, and that's chayav karet. Okay, so now we're going to see over here tevilat haguf. When it comes to tevilat haguf, we're going to compare the washing of the hands of the bread meal to dipping, just to show you how severe it is, the mitzvah of washing the hands for the bread meal. Now it makes more sense to me when the Halacha and the Shulchan Aruch says that one who washes his hands with a lot of water, he's going to be blessed. You see a lot of people, they wash their hands. Why they're not blessed? Maybe because of the Chatzitzah. Maybe because they don't wash their hands properly. And other things, of course, also. Okay. Chatzitzah, we explained what it is. So the Shulchan Aruch said, Tzarich lizaher shelo yeh Chatzitzah. A person needs to be careful that they shouldn't have any Chatzitzah on their hand. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to speak about what happens if this was on her body. What happens if the Chatzitzah is going to be on her body? And then we're going to take these laws and we're going to apply it to the washing of the hands. The Mishnah Berurah says in Sivkat and Aleph, Akdim lazeh hakdama kitzar. I want to proceed with a small introduction. Halachically, we know that when a woman dips into the mikvah, the halacha is that you have to be careful, or she has to be careful, that there shouldn't be any chatzitzah, meaning any separation between the water and her skin. What does that mean, chatzitzah? So the Mishnah Berurah explains, v'hainu, and that means to say, shelo yeshum davar mudbak ala guf be'et ha'tevila, that there shouldn't be anything stuck or attached to her body at the time when she's dipping into the mikvah. And through this, because if she's going to have a chatzitzah, through that chatzitzah, that place is not going to be fit for water to come inside. Now if that was a chatzitzah and the water was not able to go through that area, we're going to tell you that the tevilah did not work for her, meaning she's still considered to be a nida. So this is what we're speaking about over here. Im haya chatzitzah, point number 2, If she had a Chatzitzah on her body, lo alta lo tevila. And we explained, Rabotai, there's many forms of Chatzitzah that a woman can have. Especially that's why a lot of times when a woman goes into the mikvah, she should first go into the mikvah to make sure to make her hair wet. Why? To make the hair heavy. Again, Rabotai, I don't know who are the balanim. I don't know, meaning the woman that watch you go inside. They probably know the halacha, but it's very important, at least to go more than 1 or 2 times. Why? Because if your hair is, even if you came out of the shower, sometimes you can shower at home, or even in the mikvah itself, your hair, you want to make it a little bit heavier. So when you're going into the mikvah, you don't have no hair coming out. Because if your hair also, even one single hair comes out, that's also Chatzitzah, meaning that even though there's no Chatzitzah on the hair, but the Chatzitzah is that no water was able to touch it. So that's why you have to be very careful to dip into the mikvah, make your hair very wet, so this time when you go again a second time, the hair goes with you, and it doesn't just come out. Okay. So that's what the second point is telling us. If a woman had a Chatzitzah on her body, meaning something which is going to separate the skin and the water from coming in contact with the skin, we're going to tell you the tevila is not good. She's still considered to be a nida. Even though from the Torah, when did the Torah say that you have the problem of Chatzitzah? That is specifically if it's on the majority of a woman's body. But nevertheless, midirabanan asur afilim haya Chatzitzah al miut aguf. However, came the Chachamim, they said even if there's Chatzitzah on a minority part of a woman's body, still it's going to be asur for her to dip like that, and the tefillah is not going to help her. Why? Gezerah ataruba. They made a gezerah, they made a decree because of the majority. What does that mean? Point number 3. Mina Torah, from the Torah, Chatzitzah tzricha liyot al rov haguf. In order for a woman's tevila, the dipping, to be disqualified, the Chatzitzah has to be on majority of her body. That's from the Torah. So take a woman's body, for example. 51% of her body is covered in mud. Just giving you an example. 49 is not covered. From the Torah, this is considered to be a disqualified dipping. However, what happens if it was 49% she was covered in mud? I'm talking about dry mud, right? Not that something's going to come out, where water's not able to touch her skin. And 51% her body was open. From the Torah, she's considered that she went to the mikvah. Meaning the dipping is a good dipping. Nevertheless, point number 4, came the Chachamim, and they said that midirabanan, from the rabbis, afil im haya Chatzitzah al miut aguf. Why? Gezerah atoruba. Came the Chachamim, and they said even if a woman has Chatzitzah now, even on a minority part of her body, let's say she had dry mud stuck on the back, she didn't pay attention to it, the Chachamim say that type of dipping is not going to help. Why? And this is very important. And a lot of it, Rabotai, the Chachamim made only to protect future stumbling blocks. What do I mean? They made a gezerah because of the majority. You know what's going to end up happening? Let's say Leah, she's going to walk into the mikvah, and Sarah is standing behind her waiting for her to also to dip into the mikvah. So Leah, let's say she has a very clog of earth that's on her body, or she has a bandage, I don't know, she has something that is stuck on her body that's going to cause us a problem with the dipping. Nevertheless, from the Torah, it's good, correct? It's good. It's just the rabbi said it's not good. Sarah, who's in the back, you know what she's going to say? She's going to say, 1 second. If they're allowing her to dip with such a small bandage on her back, so maybe then I can have a lot of more bandages on my whole back. Meaning she'll have Chatzitzah on majority of her body, but we know that's not good. In order for a woman not to make that mistake, we even don't allow the first woman to dip with a small bandage. You understand? It's a decree. It is something that the Chachamim, they wanted to push us away from. One more time. From the Torah, it's majority of the body that has to be with Chatzitzah. Came the rabbis, they said, no, even 1% of the body. If it has Chatzitzah, that dipping is disqualified. Why is it disqualified? Because we are afraid that other people might learn out, and next time when they're going to come and dip, they're going to have majority Chatzitzah on their body, and they're going to think, look, I'm not a problem. Why am I not a problem? Because I saw that woman went with the Chatzitzah, but that Chatzitzah was 1%. It was not 51%. And now she's going to think she could have 51%. So that's what the Chachamim said, even the 1%, we're going to tell you to make sure that she cannot have that on herself. Okay, now we're going to move on, understanding how this whole thing works. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah says, however, excuse me, lo asuru hachamim elim ken shederech bnei adam lakpid alav shisher kach. Okay, let's do this. Once we know that the Chachamim came and they said that even if you have a minority, let's just put 1% for argument's sake, she has Chatzitzah 1% on her body, the Chachamim says still it is asur, it is forbidden for you to go to the mikvah like that, and if you did go, that mikvah is not a good mikvah, correct? Nevertheless, comes the Mishnah Berurah and he says like this, when did the Chachamim make it asur? He says that specifically in the situation if the Kishederech b'nei adam lakpid alav shisher kach, that is specifically in the situation where a person is particular if you're going to leave it like that. I'm going to give you an example. If a person has a stain, let's say I have a stain right over here on my white shirt. Even though the stain is a very small stain, will it bother me? Of course, because it's, it's suitable to everyone. It's going to bother me. So comes the Mishnah Berurah and he tells you over here, when did we say that this miut, this minority Chatzitzah, is not going to allow you to dip into the mikvah? That is specifically if that Chatzitzah bothers you. For example, if a woman would have, let's say, glue or crazy glue on her finger. She was doing her nails and she got crazy glue on her finger, on her finger. Will she go to the wedding like this? If normal people are going to tell you, no, we're not going to go because it's embarrassing. Why would I want to walk around with crazy glue when I could just take it off? We're going to tell you that is the minority when the Chachamim said that type of Chatzitzah you shouldn't dip with. So one more time. Lo asur Chachamim elim ken kishederech bnei adam lakpid alav sheisheir kach. Where did the Chachamim say that the minority of the Chatzitzah is forbidden for a woman to dip? That's specifically in the situation where people are particular on it, that if you're going to leave it like that. But even though now at the time when you're dipping, you don't care for it. However, what happens if the person, he doesn't care? The way is not to be particular about that Chatzitzah. It's not considered to be Chatzitzah even though you have something on your body. Unless it covered the majority of your body, then it becomes forbidden from the rabbis. Even though it's something that people are not particular about it, nevertheless the Chachamim are going to tell you it is asur since it's on the majority of the body. I'll give you another case. I'll give you a very good case. Again, this situation, I'm speaking about majority in general. An average woman care about their nails. I was giving this halacha one time, and one guy went home and he said to his wife, do you care how your nails look? Meaning if they're chipped, if they're nicked. Sometimes you wash the dishes and the nail polish comes over here. So she says, no, I don't care. No, I don't care. No, I'm fine with it. Okay, so it's fine. So he said, what? If she's fine with it, then she could go to the mikvah? But the problem is, women do care about their nail polish. So that is exactly what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you. That's a very good example, by the way. Well, let's make this one more time clear with the nail situation. From the rabbis, we said 1%. Here we go. A woman wanted to go to the mikvah with nail polish. She went to the nail salon right an hour before the mikvah. She got her nails done. Whatever it was, everything was beautiful. No nick, nothing. Before she was going to go to the mikvah, she had to stop by the house, she had to do something. She doesn't know what happened. She looks. She has a small nick on her fingernail. Here we go. Even though this is not even 1%, it's less than 1% of a person's body, of the Chatzitzah on the fingernail. Nevertheless, we're going to tell you, since in general women are particular about it, we're going to tell you you're not allowed to go to the mikvah like that. You're going to tell me, Rabbi, no, I'm not particular about it. I don't care for it. No, even at the time when you're going to the mikvah, you don't care for it. But the real question is, if you're going to go to the wedding, if you're going to go to a meeting, and you have this chip on your nail, would you present yourself like that? Absolutely not. A normal woman will be bothered by a chipped nail polish off her fingernail. So that's what the Mishnah is telling us right now. Even though it's only a little bit, doesn't matter. Since people are particular about it, we're going to tell it's Chatzitzah. But let's say, if you would have a situation where you ask 90% of the people, meaning 90% of the women, you ask them, let me ask you, if you have a whole nail polish missing from your fingernail, would that bother you? Will you attend to the wedding? And if 90% of the women can tell me with 100% confidence, and we see it, that's how people do it, the Mishnah comes and tells you, that's not considered to be Chatzitzah. Because remember, you have 4 fingernails that are polished, one is not. It's a problem. So that's why it comes to Mishnah and tells you like this. Now that nobody's particular about it, even if it's a minority, like 1 fingernail, what are we going to tell you? We're going to tell you that that's not considered to be a Chatzitzah because you're not particular when you have this chip on the one nail. Okay, so all this was regarding Tevilah. So let's just make this, by the way, the nail case is more important than anything. That's why, by the way, the best thing to do, I know it's going to be hard for women to do, but the best thing to do when you're going to the mikveh, you want to make sure you cut in your nails so you don't have the problem with dirt underneath the nails. If you're not going to cut your nails, make sure you clean it thoroughly. But when it comes to the nail polish, it has to be fresh nail polish. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, he says the minhag is not to do it. Again, speak to your local rabbi. But what I do want to bring down, that if you have a chip on 1 fingernail and you are particular about it, even though at the time of dipping you don't care for it, we're not worried about the then. We're worried about in general. Would you go out to work like this? Would you go out to a wedding? Would you go out to a very important meeting? If the answer is no, where average woman will tell you the answer is no, we're going to tell you that's considered to be a Chatzitzah. It's a separation and the mikvah is not a good mikvah. So you have to be very careful to remove all the nail polish. However, let's go the other way around. What happens if the woman had on this one nail polish, on this one fingernail, she had nail polish, and let's say half of it was removed. And let's say that was the style, and 90% of the women would not be bothered by it. You know what we're going to tell you? If in all honesty, they're not bothered, and they think, that's the design, and that's how people walk outside, we'll tell you no problem, because it's a mute, it's a minority, and you're not particular about it. We're going to tell you it's not a Chatzitzah. But in general, when it comes to the laws of mikvah, there are many more halachot, not only in your day, in the Shulchan Aruch edition, in your day, there's a whole siman on Chatzitzah itself. That's why it's very important if a woman, a lot of women, Baruch Hashem, they do Tehillim groups, they do Hafrashat Chala, they do Berachot party, all this is nice. I'm not going to take that away. But maybe you could ask the Rebbetzins to teach you halachot of Chatzitzah, to teach you halachot of Shabbat. Women also have to know halachot that pertain to them. Even though you have no mitzvah of learning Torah, you still have a mitzvah of learning Torah which pertains to you. Okay, now that we know this, after we finish with this, now the Mishnah Berurah is going to go ahead and he's going to speak about, now we understand the laws of Tevilat Aguv, how the Chatzitzah applies. Now we want to move on to Nitilat Yadayim. The same halachot Rabotai are going to move on to Nitilat Yadayim. So he says like this, Ule'ina Nitilat Yadayim Gamken. So too when it comes in regards to the washing of the hands for the bread meal, you're going to have the same problem. Avshul midarabanan, even though the washing of the hands is from the rabbis, mikvah is from the Torah, washing the hands is only from the rabbis. Nevertheless, he says, Kol di tikun rabbanan ke'en do'oraita tikun. Whenever the Chachamim institute something, we look at it as if the Torah itself instituted it. So don't how do you say, don't look down on the mitzvah of washing the hands for the bread meal just because the rabbis have instituted it. When the rabbis institute something, it's as if the Torah instituted it. And therefore, im yesh chatzitzah al rov hayad, same thing that we use for the body, now we're going to apply it to the washing of the hands. If you have chatzitzah on majority of a person's hand, dahainu, which means al rov makom anitil, that specifically has to be on the place of the washing of the hands, asur afil im ein derech ben adam lakpid alav. It is forbidden for you to wash your hands, even if people are not particular. He doesn't care, right? Let's say you have, okay, so I'm putting it to you like this. The Shulchan Aruch says that there's 2 halachot on how to wash your hand. So let's say this is the hand. Okay, let's do like this. If this is the hand, the Shulchan Aruch says over here that the washing has to be, one second. The Shulchan Aruch says over here that the washing has to be really up to the knuckles. Like up to you, that's it. That's the first opinion. Another opinion says, no, you have to wash it up until the wrist, where the hand starts moving. And that's how we follow. Let's just go with the second opinion because that's how the halacha follows. And I want to explain to you like this. Comes the Mishnah Berurah and he says, let's say if you had dry mud stuck on your hand, so let's say the hand is, this is where you have, up to here you have to wash, and you had 51% of mud on your hand, dry mud. Now to take it off is going to take some time. So what do? You go ahead and you wash your hands. According to what the Mishnah Berurah is telling us right now, even if you don't care for that mud, you know what he's going to tell you? That's considered to be chatzitzah. Why? Because it's on the majority of your hand. It's 51% on your hand. If your whole hand is 100%, if it's 51% chatzitzah, 49% not chatzitzah, even though you don't care for it, we're going to tell you that you're not allowed to wash your hands like that for the bread meal. Now, however, he considers, he says, what happens if it was only on a small part of the hand? It's not asur to wash like that. You could wash like that unless he says you're particular about it. For example, let's say a person has, I don't know, a person was painting the house. He's not a painter. Now he has white paint right away on his finger. One finger. What could it already be? But he's not going to go like this to a meeting. He's not going to go like this to a wedding. Since it's only minority, in reality, it should have been fine. But the problem is, it bothers him. Oh, since it bothers you, you're not allowed to wash your hands like that. You have to make sure first the paint is gone, then you could wash your hands. But let's go the other way around. What happens if it was a painter? So I'll tell you, Rabotai, almost when I started learning was like almost 21, but more 23, 26, like when I started getting back into religion, when I used to go to college, but then I used to also work with my father. So a lot of things as a shoemaker, I used to actually fix shoes. So as a shoemaker, you work with black dye, brown dye, red dye, glue, all these things. Now a lot of times your hands would get dirty. A lot of times you would have glue on your hands. So personally, it didn't bother me. I mean, that was my work. It just didn't bother me. Somebody else, they would come and they would get dirty. 1 hour they would be cleaning. I don't know if you ever saw a shoemaker's hand, or if you ever saw a painter's hand. They're not really particular about it. So comes to Mishnah Berurah and he says, if you're not particular about that dye being on your hand, good, no problem. It's a minority, and you're allowed to wash your hands. Why? Because you're not particular about it. That's what he's telling us over here. But if it was on a minority of a person's hand, it's not asur unless, when is it going to be asur for you to wash? That's only if it's the way to be particular on that chatzitzah. And now I'm going to explain to you the words of the Shulchan Aruch. This that he wrote, Lizaher mechatzitza. What did the Shulchan Aruch write when we showed the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning? He said, Tzarich lizaher mechatzitza. What did the Shulchan Aruch want when he said those words that a person has to be careful from chatzitza? He says over here, Hainu, which means to say, Sheyasir mahayadayim kodem hanitila. You should remove from your hands before the washing of the hands. Kol davar shederech ben adam lakpid alav lasiro. Anything which people in general are particular about to remove. ואם נטל ידיו ואחר כך נמצא עליו דבר חוצץ, בין על מיעוט היד, בין על רוב היד, since it's the Rabbanan, what happens if you went ahead and you washed your hands and afterwards you find that there's something, there was a Chatzitzah on your hand, whether it was on a small part of your hand or on the majority part of your hand, he's going to tell you, since it's the Rabbanan, talin al-hakel, shenitav achar kach. We're going to be lenient since it already happened after the fact. However, lechatchila, initially, ra'ui sheya'en kodem nitila, it's proper for one to look into his hand before the washing of the hands for the bread meal, im in alav davar chotzetz, to make sure that there's nothing that is a chatzitzah on his hand. So before we do conclude the class, let's just run a small summary, yes? It's very important. Now I want you guys to understand now, the next time you're going to wash, you're going to appreciate the washing of the hands. And this is what they say about Gedolim, that whenever they learn Torah, they're walking Shulchan Aruch. How can they be walking Shulchan Aruch? Because when they wash, the siman comes to their mind. Okay, I have to wash like this. Like for example, you guys wake up in the morning, you say Modani because that's what you have to do. Right? You say Baruch Atah, right? Asher Kiddushan Mitzat Tzvan Al Tzei Yadayim, because that's what the Halacha says you have to do. Right? A guy puts on tefillin, because that's what the Halacha says. So everything that we do, we're doing according in Halacha, but when you have a better understanding, you appreciate the mitzvah more. It's not just, let me get it over with, but you do it actually correctly. And that's why it's very important to know these halachot thoroughly. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to the Chazara. We start speaking about point number 1, tzarich lizaher shelo yeh chatzitzah. A person needs to be very careful that there shouldn't be any chatzitzah on a person's hand. Also, we'll see the body now, but this first point is going on the hand. Like the Shulchan Aruch said, what is a chatzitzah? Chatzitzah is something which makes a separation between the skin and the water. It does not allow the water to touch the skin. That's the chatzitzah. Point number 2. Now we're going to be speaking about dipping into the mikvah. Im haya chatzitzah lo alta la tevila. If a woman had chatzitzah on her body, the tevila doesn't help her. She has to go back and she has to remove the chatzitzah and then she has to dip again. Mina Torah, chatzitzah tzricha liyot al rov haguf. From the Torah, the chatzitzah needs to be on majority of a woman's body, 51%. Then we're going to tell you that the tevila is not a good tevila. That dipping is not a good dipping. However, midrabanan, they came and the rabbi said, I feel him haya chatzitz al miyut aguf. Still it's going to be not a good tevila. Why? Gazru ataruba. We made a gezerah because we're afraid that somebody's going to see you have 1% chatzitz on your body and they're going to say, 1% is not a problem. So who says 51% is a problem? So they're also going to have chatzitz on their body, 51%, but that's a problem. So what does the Chachamim do? They say even if it's only a 1% of your body, we're going to tell you that it's considered to be a chatzitza. Then we said, Shederech b'nei adam lakpid alav af ata en makpid. Then we explain, when did the Chachamim say that miyut aguf? When did we say that even if it's on 1% of your body, the chatzitza, and the mikvah that doesn't, the tvila doesn't help you? That's specifically when the people are particular about it. Like I gave you the case with the nail polish or painting. Even though at the time when you're dipping into the mikvah, you don't care for it, correct? Now you don't care for it. But in general, in a meeting, a wedding, your party, will you care for it? Yes. So therefore it's a chatzitza. So again, Rabotai, this halacha over here, in general, a woman needs to be very, very careful when she dips into the mikvah with nail polish. Believe me, I know, Rabotai, again, women in general are, I don't want to say the word crazy, but when it comes to nail polish, Baruch Hashem, I'm married, thank God, I have sisters, I have my mother, I have aunts, I have cousins, and it's nuts how they take care of the nail. Before they go to the mikvah, they'll take it off. After they come out of the mikvah, they'll go and then redo it because they want to be without nail polish. And the nail polish is not $20. Sometimes it could be $80, sometimes it could be $120, depending on what kind of nail polish they put. I don't know, they have all these different. But women take care of themselves. So if that is the case, by you going to the mikvah with nail polish in your hands, and by accident, when you come out, there's going to be a nick, and you left the mikvah, and now you come home, understand that dipping is not a good dipping. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. To avoid all these problems, what should you do? Make sure you remove all your nail polish and even cut your nail in order to be able to see everything, that you shouldn't have all these problems. Rabotai, mikvah is not a small thing. It is not a small thing. If chas v'shalom, a guy sleeps to nida, Rabotai, that's kritu, that's chayiv karet. Okay. Point number 6. But we did mention, davar she'en adam makpid alav, eno chotzetz elim ken hayam mechaseh rov haguf. Let's say that whole exaggerated case that I gave you, let's say, right, on the nail, it was half of the nail was chipped off. And let's just say that is the style. And 90% of the women wouldn't mind doing the weddings like that or going to meetings. Okay, good. Since it's only minority, and the women are not particular, we're going to tell you you're allowed to go like that to the mikvah. All this is regards to dipping. When it comes to the washing of the hands, we're going to apply the same halachot. But remember, when it comes to the washing of the hands, since it's the Rabbanan, even though we look at it as if the Torah instituted it, lechatchila, initially the best way is to always look into your hands to make sure that there's no chatzitzah. Not on your hand, not under your hand, not between your nails, right, inside your nails, whatever it might be. Make sure that there's no chatzitzah. Then go ahead and wash your hands for the bread meal.